Hi, thank you for watching my video on how to add Firebase Firestore to an existing Android application. If you already watched my previous video on how to add Firebase authentication, then you can use that same Firebase project and click one of the timestamps in the description, but you will still have to add the new Android application to that Firebase project. Otherwise, I'll be going through how to set it up from scratch. First, we'll sign in Firebase and then create a new project. I'm calling this one Firebase Firestore Example. And then I'm going to accept the defaults. So after you've created your project, you should click the Android button to add an Android app, and then I'm going to get the package name from the Android manifest file. The next step is to download the config file and drop it into the app level folder of your Android project. Now if you see this message saying that there's already a config file, go ahead and hit replace. I'm going to skip over this part because I already added these dependencies into the app when I first created it. And now we're running the app, and it does take a little while for it to confirm with the Firebase. But now we see our app listed here, so that's great. And then we're going to go over to database, and in this section I'll click create database, which is the Firestore one, and I'm going to set it to test mode. That allows any user to read or write any file on your app, so you wouldn't want to have this in an actual production app, but it's fine for this demo. So now we have our empty database, but I have a function in the app that we can run to populate it with our starter data. If you can uncomment these lines of code and then comment out the lines above, it will make it so that this activity is the starter activity instead of the main activity. And the starting activity now has a function that's going to run that'll populate the database for us. So now that you got that message, you can refresh the database and you'll see all of our data is populated. So here we have our movie titles that we're going to be referring to instead of the mock movie titles that are in the app currently. So now I'm uncommenting the section that we did before so that the app is going to run normally again. It's going to use the mock data that's here in movies fragment, which you can find under the file path listed on the left. And when I expand this function, you can see that it's really just creating a list of movie titles, and they're all mock data right now, which is why they have the asterisk after them. But the titles in the database don't have that asterisk. So our first Trello task is going to be to replace the mock movie titles with the actual Firestore data. So right here, I'm going to write Firebase Firestore.getInstance.collection, and then I'll pass in the name of the collection. So I'm going to jump back over to see what it is. It's movie titles. And then I'm going to add a snapshot listener, and this grabs like an actual live data form of everything in that folder, in that collection. And then I'm going to say if exception is null, meaning that there wasn't any exception and the data went through properly. Then I'm going to move this recycler view adapter up here. And I'm also going to grab the actual recycler view, and I'm going to put that in here as well. And then because the data that's getting pulled down is document snapshots, we need to convert it to actual movie titles. So the way that I'm going to do that is create an empty list and then iterate over every movie title in the results. And then I have to put a question mark for the null check, and then I'm going to put 2 exclamation marks just to confirm that we will get some results. And then this line right here is where we convert it to an object, and I'm going to pass in the object of our data class called movie title. And then again, we have to put the 2 exclamation marks to assert that it's not going to be null. Now once I run this, we should see the same thing that we saw before, except without asterisks, and it's going to be actually using live data from our database. Okay, great, so there's no asterisks, and the cool thing about the live data is that if I update it in our database, it'll actually update in real time over on our right side. So I'm going to change Avengers Infinity War to Avengers Endgame, and if you look at the card that represents that movie title, it updated immediately. And then I'm going to go set it back. Okay, so that task is done, and the next one is that we're going to actually do the full movies now, not just the movie title. So first I'm going to go into the app, I'm going to kind of rearrange some of the stuff so that we see what the movies look like when they're being pulled from our mock data. And here's our mock data. Okay, so you can see all the asterisks, meaning that this is mock data, and this is what the final view is going to look like when we actually do pull it from the database. And since the call is going to be very similar, I'm actually just going to change every instance of movie title to the word movies. And then once again, I have to pull in all of this logic. Okay, so I'm running the app again, and we should see the same thing we saw before, except without asterisks, and it actually is pulling in live data from the database. So if I update the data in the database, it should appear immediately. Alright, so that task is complete, and the next one is going to be to replace mock games with a Firestore call. So you're probably wondering what the games is referring to. There's actually a fragment here called games fragment, and if you go to the main activity, I've hidden the bottom navigation bar, but when we comment that line out so that's not hidden and run the app, we should see that there's actually a bottom navigation bar that has games and events. And again, these are all using mock data, so we're going to use an actual Firestore call. So I'm going to call Firebase Firestore.getInstance.collection, and then our collection is called games. And then I'm going to add a snapshot listener and do the same thing that we did last time, where I iterated over each document snapshot and converted it to our local class. Okay, so now we're actually getting the live data, and you can see that when I change one of these values, it appears immediately on the other side. So now that that task is done, we're going to do the same thing, but with the concerts. So there's actually a details activity in the app, and whenever you click on a movie, it shows you more details about it, and you can add it to your scene, to your favorites, or to your watch list. So within the details activity, we'll get the movie by calling Firebase Firestore.getInstance.collection, and then pass in the collection, which is movies, and then .document, and we're going to pass in the title that was passed to this activity as a string, and then finally I'm going to call .get and then .addOnCompleteListener. And this differs a little bit from the snapshot listener because this isn't going to be live data, but since these events aren't likely going to be updated very frequently, it's okay to put it here, and I kind of just want to show like the difference between the two and why live data is generally preferred. So in this part, we're saying if the call is successful, then we'll go ahead and set the current movie to the result of the query that is then converted to the movie object. Now this is what I meant about it not being live data, because you can see that I changed the genres to the word none and it hasn't updated, but when I go back to the live data you can see it did update, and then I click back into this details activity and it's showing again. Okay, so now you're able to see how to get Firestore data, but next we're going to show how to update and add Firestore data. To set up this checkbox functionality, we're going to have to call out to the users collection, and the user will have 3 different arrays on them. That is a watch list, a list of movies that they have seen, and then also a list of their favorites. So here I'm getting that user by calling .collection users.document and then the name of the user's document, which is in this case example user. So now that we've got our example user, we have to check if this movie is in their watch list of movies seen, or in their favorites list. So I'm going to do user.watchlist contains title. And then if it does, I'll go ahead and set the checkmark functionality to be checked. And then the other two checkboxes are going to be very similar, so I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this, and then just change the word watch list to whichever list is correct for this one. So here I'm testing it. I went ahead and put a little bit of data into the Firestore database just so I can see if it's working. Okay, great, and it does show that watch list is already checked because it is in this user's watch list. So now I'm going to set up the checkmark functionality. Since we already have a document snapshot referring to the current user, I'm going to get a reference by calling .reference and then .update. And here we're going to pass in the path to the field that we're updating. So in this case, it's movie scene. And the way that you add or remove from an array, you would do field value.array union to add, or field value.array remove to remove an item from the array. And here I'm using Kotlin's version of a ternary operator to check if the box is checked or not, to let it know whether it should add or remove that item. And then finally, I'm going to do the same thing for the other two checkboxes, so I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste, and then change the variable. So now it should be working. I'm going to launch the app and then go into a few different movies, adding things to the favorites and to the watch list, and see if they persist. Now at this point, I realized that I'd forgotten that the favorite checkbox has a little bit different functionality since it actually uses a button drawable instead of just the default checkbox. So I had to go ahead and add this line right here saying button drawable equals and then get drawable. But that is the final line of the demo, so now all the functionality should be working, and we can go ahead and put the last task into the done pile. Now it's kind of hard to see, but this is checked, so everything's done. Alright, so thank you so much for watching my presentation, and if you have any questions, please send me a message. Thanks!